everybody. Welcome back to those of you that are repeats, to those of you that are new. I'm Karen Rechtin. I'm a Counterpoint consultant. I've been a consultant for over 20 years, worked in retail my whole life. I've been a buyer, been a district manager, I've been a manager, I've done all the kind of things that you all do. So I think I kind of understand what we're doing on a daily basis here. Today we're going to talk about understanding and maximizing your inventory and your inventory investment using the reporting that's in Counterpoint. There's a lot of pretty complex reporting in Counterpoint that will help you out with these topics. And so we're going to review a lot of the terminology that is used in these topics or in these reports, and then we're going to go through some of the reports and review and see how we can use that information. So that said, I'm going to share my first screen here that's got a bunch of terminology. Okay. Not the best view here, but anyway. Okay. So with our inventory, our goal is to have a good assortment of items in our store. A lot of items that are stock items, that are staples that we can turn over and over again and sort of have on auto replenish. And those are sort of the meat and potatoes of our inventory, and those make us a lot of recurring money. And then also we need items that are unique in our inventory, and the things that are seasonal and that are unique to us and that make our store, that makes us different from others, that give us personality. So having that mix and having the right mix that's making you money is important, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Also, it's important to know what's holding money and tying up money that you could be spending on items that will turn and make you more money. So we want to move along items that are old and tying up funds and dragging down your inventory. So we've got reporting for all of those things. In Counterpoint, if you were with me on Monday for the reporting session, we just breezed over some of these reports, but we're going to dig into some of these more today. So the reports to look at our inventory performance are merchandise analysis, sell-through rate report, MinMax advice, and inventory aging. And then tomorrow, because tomorrow is sort of an extension of today's topic, tomorrow Diane will be holding a webinar on purchasing, and so she'll probably talk about using purchasing advice and using forecast-driven replenishment. And sort of these inventory topics sort of feed into the purchasing topics. So if you've ever looked at any of the reports like merchandise analysis, there's a lot of terminology in them that sometimes we are not sure what this terminology is. So I thought I would start out first by defining what some of these things are before we look at the reports. So we can read, but I'll talk through all of them as well. So we have gross profit, and we have it both as a percentage and in dollars. So we have our gross profit percentage, which is sales minus cost divided by sales times 100. The times 100 is what gives us the percentage. So we also have our gross profit dollars, which is just our retail sales dollars minus our cost dollars. So the gross profit represents the difference between price, selling price, and cost. Often also referred to as margin. And this is in alphabetical order too, by the way, so it's kind of a random order. The reorder point is the point at which stock replenishment requisition should be submitted to maintain the predetermined or calculated stocking objective. So that would be when our stock gets to the level we should be ordering it, basically. Then our safety stock, that's a level of stock that we need to have sort of in addition to our minimum so that we don't have stock outs, or it needs to be part of our minimum so that we don't have stock outs. And we're going to look at a little chart of how to figure out what our mins and maxes should be. But it provides protection against running out of stock during the time it takes to replenish inventory. Then we have our sell-through. So the percentage of quantity sold in the period compared to our quantity on hand. So we've got our formula here, quantity sold divided by quantity bought times 100. If you start with 0, receive 100, sell 25, you have a sell-through percentage of 25%. So this is very often used to track an item's performance against a buyer's plan. And then we have, similarly, our turn rate. That is a measure of how quickly your inventory sells. So a turn rate of 6 would indicate that you sell your merchandise quickly enough to replace 6 times per year. So turn rates generally talked about and figured on an annual basis. So because it's done on an annual basis, we have an annualized formula. So our turns at cost, the cost of the amount sold divided by the average cost on hand annualized. And annualized means the value over the entered period is extended into a full year. And then we have the formula for that here. So if you had an average quantity of 10 on hand and sold 100 in a year, you needed to replenish your inventory 10 times or you had 10 turns. And increasing your turns will allow you to have more cash available to your business. So items that you sell a lot, you're going to have higher turns on. It brings in more and more cash over and over again. So it's better to have items that turn and that you purchase many, many times than to order, in that example, all 100 at the beginning of the year. You'd be better off to order 10 times a year. So your cash is turning and you're not holding up your cash for the 100 that are sitting in stock. And then we have a weeks on hand formula, and that's our quantity on hand divided by our average quantity sold per week. And then there's an additional formula for that there. So then sort of a biggie here is our GMROI, our gross margin return on investment. And that's probably the most important measure. And so if we go down here, it's for each unit of average inventory held at cost, how many units of currency of gross profit you generated for 1 year. So this is really our true profitability dollar figure here. And the calculation, is gross margin at dollars divided by average inventory at dollars. And our gross margin is sales minus cost of goods sold divided by sales. And our average inventory is your beginning inventory dollars plus your ending inventory dollars divided by 2. So that gross margin and average inventory are the 2 pieces that are in this calculation here. So all these things are a lot of math. So here we have an example. Take a store that has sales of $1 million and a cost of goods sold of $400,000. This leaves them with a gross margin of 60%. And there's the calculation there. And then we have a little discussion here about our excess inventory and what that does to our gross margin. And again, on that topic, any merchandise that's sitting and not selling is just holding up funds that you could be using for merchandise that would be turning and creating profit for you. So it's really important to move along that excess inventory and things that have been sitting. A lot of retailers have inventory that sits and sits and sits, and they don't want to put it on sale because they don't want to lose that margin. A lot of times you're really better off to put it on sale, take a lower margin, just so you get the cash flow of that coming in so that you can buy new merchandise and freshen up your store and buy things that are going to turn more often and make you more money. So before I move into looking at merchandise analysis, I see we have a couple questions. So should we look at those before?
Sure, yeah, we can
move on?
get into those. So I believe I'm understanding Carrie's question correctly here. She's asking kind of if shipping costs are taken into account. You said like it might be better to do 10 small orders instead of 100 at once. Is there a possibility that shipping could factor into that?
Sure, definitely. Because if you're, like I work with a business, for example, that might have to order a container of something. And so in that case, there are always exceptions to every rule. If you have to order a container that's coming overseas, then yes, you have to factor in shipping. And then yes, you're probably only going to get one turn during the period on that. But if it's something like cases of water that you are going to sell every week, then in that case, you're going to want to, then you'll probably have shipping negotiated or delivery terms built in. And in that case, it may not have as big an effect. So yes, it definitely needs to factor in. Yes.
Okay. And then Matthew wanted to know, is there a way of doing forecast judgment of sales by season?
Yes, and that's in the forecast-driven replenishment piece of Counterpoint.
Okay, because they have
and
two.
That I'm not going to talk about that today, but it may be in the purchasing thing tomorrow that Diane's going to do, or if not, we can take that offline in a separate session.
Okay, Matthew, we'll get back to you on that. And then Carrie asks, at what point would you suggest we bite the bullet to put on a sale? Slow sales after just 30 days?
There's not a canned answer to that. I can't answer that. I think we'd have to talk about what kind of merchandise it is, how much money's tied up in it. Hard to answer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then
if we all had that, we'd all be making a whole lot of money.
Yeah, it's a guessing game for sure. Tiffany wants to know, what if you get discounts on ordering more in bulk? Would ordering more often through the year still be beneficial?
Well, again, it depends on the discount. Depends on how much discount you get, how much you have to buy to get the discount, what your freight costs are. Yes, all that has to be factored in for sure.
Okay. That's all the questions we have right now.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to bring up Counterpoint. I'll try that again. There we go. Okay, so we're going to look at merchandise analysis first, and that is under inventory, reports, and merchandise analysis. And this is a biggie, merchandise analysis. So the Counterpoint discussion of it says, You can classify, rank, and report item information using a variety of criteria. The report includes over 180 different measurements to choose from, including units sold, sales dollars, profitability, on-hand quantity, turn rate, GMROI, weeks on hand, discount, markdown, and so forth. Allows you to view your information by quantities, costs, or retail values. And you can look at things by item level or group level. So here we've got our first choice here. Are we going to analyze by group or by item? So if we look at group, for example, we might be doing it at a category level instead of at an item level. So just depending on what we're looking at here. Then we can decide what items we want to look at. So for example, we could say we want to look at our top 100 items. And then we're going to rank them by gross margin, and we'll get to that. We'll get to different columns and rankings in a second. So we've got our top 100 items here, and then how do we want to rank them? So ranking would be in what order we're looking at them. So here we've got number of transactions, quantity sold, sales dollars, cost, profit, or profit percent. We'll say we want to see sales. And then do we want to group those top 100 items any particular way? So then we've got different choices here. We'll do it by category. And then within each group, do we want to narrow it down further? So top 10, top 25, whatever within my group. And then how are we going to order them? So we've got all kinds of choices here. Order them by rank, which is what we'll leave it as. And then what date range, what sales date range do we want to look at for this? So again, because I'm not sure what my data is in here, I'm just going to put the year 2000 till now. Then this is a nice report because this is one that we can get multiple locations. So here we can get all locations on the report. We can just pick a location group, or we can just pick one specific location. So I'll leave it as all locations. Nice options here, show a pie chart, show location detail. I want location detail, so it'll be broken out. Whether or not I want to include inactive inventory. So that would be items within the item setup if it has the checkbox to be inactive checked. And then if we want dollar rounding or quantity rounding, I personally don't care for those, so I always turn them off. If we want a pie chart. And then this is a really nice feature of this report because you can change the different groups of columns that you're going to see in the report. So there's already some canned choices here. So under the quantities, we're going to see number of transactions, quantity sold, sales, cost of sales, profit, and profit percent. If we look at inventory performance, which is kind of what we're talking about here today, here we see what is our current quantity on hand, quantity on PO, beginning balance, ending balance, quantity sold, sell through. So there's our sell through percent, our profit percent, our GMROI, our turns, and our weeks on hand. So those are all the things that we just talked about in our definitions. Then we've got sales and returns. So there we've got all of our sales information broken out from all of our return information. Our vendor comparison. So let me see what the vendor comparison was. Oh, compare each vendor's sales performance against your investment in that vendor's merchandise. So that's a good vendor analysis. And then you've got your retail value, sales analysis. So our retail value shows us retail beginning balance, so it's sort of a running total of what happened during the period. Our beginning balance, receivings, sales, adjustments, transfers to come to our ending balance. That's a nice report there. That's the full report. The brief report, not quite all that detail, but the same information. Sales analysis brief. Quantity sold with percentages. A lot of that's in percentage. And then the last option is custom. So if you pick the custom option, and you can go here to the select columns tab, and you can pick whatever columns that you want to see in your report. And you can get up to 10 columns in this report. So even though in our first parameter selection here, we've picked our top 100 items grouped by category, still you have the option to go to the item tab and you can select just one category that you might want to analyze, or one subcategory, or one vendor. So let's pick our inventory performance here and preview that. So we have this broken out by location, and then all of our columns that we talked about on our inventory performance there. We've got our profit percentage, our GMROI, our turns, and our weeks on hand. And then all of our markup information and our pricing information, vendor, etc. So studying this report will really help you get a handle on what items you've got too much of. If we look at our weeks on hand and we see that we've got, you know, a year's worth on hand and we have very low turns, those are things that we really want to look at moving on and getting rid of. And then your items that have high turns, or items that you look at and a lot of times you'll look at these reports and you think that you have an item that has very high turns and you look at it and it really doesn't. And it's just a nice realistic look at what's really going on with your inventory.
Karen, we have a quick question about the
Sure.
merchandising analysis. When running a merchandise analysis, if they select March sales, will it show on an order if the PO was created in February?
I'm sorry, you cut out a second. If it shows March what?
Sorry, if they select March sales, will it show on order if the PO was created in February?
Show March sales.
So I think if the PO is from
Predates
before,
the sales
predates,
range.
yeah.
Yeah, this is just a sales range here.
Okay.
So I believe that the rest of this is like point in time, like right now, how many do we have on PO?
Okay.
Yeah. So again, this report takes some running it some different ways, studying the figures and, you know, sort of thinking about what they mean, looking for things that stick out as being very different on the report. So when you look down the report and you can see a lot of similarities and there's just something that's very, very different, either high or low, those are really good things to focus on in your analysis. So to go a little deeper on a couple of those, or on one of those things, we also have the sell-through report. And so here we can pick our sales date range. And order the report by You can do it by item number, by sell-through percent, which is the default because it's a sell-through report. Our sales, our GMROI, or our turns. So it's a little more consolidated report with some of the same information as merchandise analysis. And then if it's a grid information, how we want to see our grid. Then in our inventory history, you could narrow this down to one location, or again, item information category. I'll just do everything. And so here we've got our beginning quantity during that period, the period that I selected, sales, our returns, other transactions that affect our quantity, our ending quantity based on that, and then our GMROI, our turns, and our sell-through percentage. So this would be a much quicker glance at some of that than the merchandise analysis. Nice report. Our MinMax advice. This is a fairly new report, so depending on what version of Counterpoint you have, you may or may not have this. Let's see. MinMax advice report helps you determine what your minimums and maximums for items should be based on some different criteria. So here again, we can run it for all locations or just a group or a single location. For what date range do we want to look at our sales? And we've got the ability to enter in our own date range, or again, like in other reports, to pick some pre-selected date ranges that are based on your calendar, either the company calendar or the standard calendar. Then if for some reason you were wanting to use this to clear out min-maxes so that you could start over or so that they don't get ordered anymore, you've got the option to pick your item range and set min-maxes to 0. So I work with some companies that's how they filter things out of their buying reports, is set their min-max to 0 and then they don't show up on their reports anymore. And then let's say we want to see minimum days of supply and maximum days of supply based on this sales date range. So if we sold during a month period of time, based on the sales for a month period of time, for example, we want to see what we need to order for 60 days minimum and 90 days maximum. And then we can either key in our own lead time, so we'll factor that much time into our calculation and our sales date range, or you can use the vendor's lead time, and that's something that you set up in every vendor item record. And then you can do it again, filter it down by whatever subset of items that you want to do that for. Let's see, 30, 60. So here it's calculating out, and it shows you what the old min and max were and what it thinks the new min and max should be. Then you've also got the option to preview that report, decide if you like it or not, and then you can actually apply those min-maxes, and it will go into the inventory records and update the min-maxes to the calculation from this report. So that's kind of a nice feature. One thing I wanted to talk about.
Quick question from
We have a
Lindsay.
question? Yep.
Would you just use 0 to set it to no lead time?
Say it again?
Would you just use 0 to set it to no lead time?
I think you just leave it blank.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Well, yeah, then you would have to, if you're not going to use the vendor lead time, you would have to put in 0. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I thought I had, in the handout that I'll provide after this, I will include sort of a flow chart that shows you some thoughts on calculating what your mins and maxes should be. One thing I think that the min-max advice doesn't factor in is you need to factor in, like, let's say, for example, you're filling pegs on a wall, and your peg holds 6, and you always want to have a presentation of 6 of whatever that item is. So you need to have your presentation plus the amount of stock you need to cover your sales for whatever period of time it is, plus your lead time. So this is factoring just on sales rather than factoring in also what you need for presentation. So in a lot of cases, if you don't necessarily need a presentation, then this will calculate that properly. But if you need that extra quantity to factor in to always have a presentation or always have, you know, whatever your shelf fill quantity is, then you need to actually add that to the figures in this report. So between looking at all of those things, all those reports, and it does take some studying, you should be able to figure out what items you can be turning more often and making more money on, what items you should get rid of because they're old and they're not turning and they're taking up money. And then once you get those kinds of things figured out and you get your min-maxes figured, then you can use the automated purchasing features in Counterpoint that will help you, like, for example, purchase advice. Purchase advice will help you determine what you should be ordering on a, it will help you figure out how much you should be ordering and automatically sort of do it for you. You can run purchase advices either manually or using the email report generator that has a feature that can actually generate purchase advice and transfer advice for you. So that those are actually generated on whatever schedule you want, and then your buyers can just come in, look at them, make changes, approve, and place the orders. And that can really be a big time saver once you get to the point you can use purchase advice. So all of this is to create efficiency and make money, which is what we all want to do. So that's about what I have to say about it. Does anybody have any questions that we haven't addressed yet?
Yes, we have a question on the sell-through rate report.
Yes.
Carrie wants to know if they can add a filter. They have exhibit, and they want to see how much merchandise they sell for a specific exhibit.
So I'm going to assume that exhibit, do we know what, is the exhibit a profile on the item?
Carrie, if you
Maybe
could
they can
type that in.
I mean, if it's an item profile, let's see.
She thinks so.
No?
Yes, she does. She
Oh, okay.
believes so.
No, it doesn't look like if it's a profile, we can filter on that, but depending on how many items it would involve, we could just list out all the item numbers. So item number is this and this and this and this and this and this, whatever they are for that exhibit.
Okay. She says they have some way to attach that exhibit tag to items. I'm not sure if she knows how they
Okay.
do it, but
I mean, we can certainly look at that offline.
okay.
Be glad to do that with you. Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.